So first, I will start by introducing myself. I'm Juan. I'm one of the principal engineers working at Novoda. And on this time, I'm collaborating here with Barry in order to organize this roundtable with the topic of generative AI, including ChatGPT, like the buzzword of the days, in business and organizations. We are going to be here together today for 1 hour. The way I have been planning, when Barry told me the large audience that we are going to be having, I understood that different people might have different interests or things that they want to hear about this topic today, right? Like Boba has already mentioned their interest on the ethical concerns and maybe the data privacy, everything related to generative AI. So I have created 5 breakout rooms. The instructions for the meeting, or at least the agenda, is on this document that I'm sharing here on the chat, if I can, to everyone in the meeting. It's an open access document. Basically, we are going to have 5 minutes for the introduction, and then we are going to jump to breakout rooms. I have created 5 breakout rooms. The idea is that you will be able to move around the different rooms, engage on different conversations, move to another room when you require it, like matching your interest. The 5 rooms that I have created for this event are the following. We have 1 room where we can talk and engage about the different generative AI technologies that we have available today and the different tools that are suitable for doing different pieces of the work that we want to do in our organizations, open source libraries, APIs offered by companies like OpenAI, but there are many others. So feel free to engage on that room for this type of conversations. A second room where we can talk about how can generative AI improve our products, but also our business operations. So how can I apply to improve the products in our organization or maybe the way we work with our teams? A third room about how to build and how to enable teams for success with this new emerging technology. Some of our organizations have been here enough in order to experience other boom in technology. Some of our organizations may be super young. This is the first time they face a challenge like this technology appearing. How can we enable our team for success? Another room for how to address the limitations and the ethical concerns of generative AI. We can discuss there the ethical considerations or maybe our concerns about data privacy or our concerns about how to evaluate the correctness of the solutions that we are implementing for our users or to internal consumption in our business. And finally, another topic which is about what skills and knowledge is actually required in order to take the maximum out of these emerging technologies. Do we need a machine learning PhD? Do we need a specialist? Is this accessible for everyone? What do we need there on that space? We are going to be engaging on this conversation on the different rooms. Feel free to jump across rooms for 30 minutes. And then finally, we are going to gather back here on the main room to share our insights, our learnings, something that got our attention during those conversations, and engage on a larger group conversation for 20 minutes before we say goodbye. After that, those that are happy to stay or want to continue the conversation are free to do so. But basically, this is going to be the main structure of the conversation today. So now, please, can someone confirm that you have available the breakout rooms? Like there should be a control here on Zoom where you can see the perfect. Thank you, Mari. I'm going to invite you to join and keep an open mind, spirit, engage on the conversation. Feel free to, and remember something, this is new to everyone. We might have more or less experience. We might have exposed to scenarios like what we are experiencing today with the emerging of generative AI before or not. But in essence, this is new for everyone. So we are here to learn together, to share our experiences together. There is nothing yet which is totally true or totally false. So don't prevent that sensation. Don't let that sensation prevent you from engaging on the conversation. And now feel free to join the rooms. I will be also popping in some of the rooms and have fun, enjoy, and share.
Is there anyone in this room that's joined and that's not seen what's happening or needs any instructions? Gonna hope not, but
in order to join a room, you just click the breakout rooms at the bottom of the screen, and you can click on the blue button that says join. Once you're inside of the room, you can also click on the breakout room and join another room from there. So it's usually a great idea to use the law of mobility. If the conversation is not appealing or interesting, or you're not gaining something from it or can give something, you can just join another room.
we have 7 remaining here.
Yeah, I'll hang out here if anyone needs support.
We've got some quite good split though. 16 in generative AI for products and
I
business
bet it's hard to get
operations.
your word in that room.
I can imagine. And we've got
That's a busy one.
And a 5. Yeah, to be honest, really good show actually. Was there 31 participants total? I think that's good. Shows it's definitely the right topic for the day. So yeah. Right, so I'm going to turn off the video and stuff. I'm here if anyone needs me. All right.
Okay.
Mark just says, I thought it was 3. Has it ended? Sorry, I got tied up. Bad tech day. No video, no sound. Okay, Mark, I'm going to assume you can hear me at least. Feel free to comment. Yes, good. Okay. So
I wasn't able to have video and sound, and what happened is I just had to leave and rejoin again, and then my video and sound got fixed.
Got it. So maybe try that, Mark, but if not, you just join the breakout rooms. So just go down the bottom right where it says breakout rooms, and you can see the different breakout rooms. Sarah shared a document there that you can see for the instructions on how to do that. Okay, mate.
Everyone that's here, just letting you know that everyone is in breakout rooms right now. There is a document shared if you want to see what topics are in each of the breakout rooms. If you click on the breakout rooms button at the bottom of your Zoom session, you can click the blue button link to join any of those rooms that you would like to engage in a conversation in. Feel free to use the law of mobility. That means moving yourself from one room to the next if needed. For example, if you're not gaining something or you can't contribute. So feel free to join any of those rooms that are there. If you're having difficulty with your camera or microphone, you are able to leave the Zoom session and rejoin again, and usually it gets fixed all on its own. I am not sure if we plan to share the recording of the session. However, I do know that we will be making a write-up on the learnings that we have gained in the least. Hope that answers your question, Sheikh. So Sheikh and Anne, feel free to join one of the breakout sessions by clicking on the breakout room button at the bottom of the screen. And you can click the blue button for joining the room. If you've joined back to this main room and would like to join another room, you can always click on a breakout session, push the blue button to join the other room. So you can use the law of mobility. Just be where you can contribute and what you can learn something from. Yeah, Barry, you're welcome to drop out if you like. Welcome, Kat. If you're coming from a breakout session, feel free to rejoin another breakout room where you can contribute something or even learn something from. The
Sure,
topics.
thanks. I'm trying to do that. I just joined because I had problem connection.
Okay, no problem.
My
I'm
laptop,
just making sure everyone knows what to do. So
it's
feel
all
free
good. Thank you. Thank you so
to
much.
move as you like. If you need any help, just reach out to me.
Thanks. Oh, good. I'm just trying to work out to see how Zoom works on a mobile device, but I think I figured it out.
Hi there. Feel free to join another room if you like. Hi there. Fun. I'm just managing the
Hello.
main room here.
Oh, good, good. I'm jumping around rooms.
Perfect. Do you know what at what time the room sessions finish?
Yes, it's gonna finish in approximately 20 minutes from now.
20 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
So do I need to broadcast any, or I can't, only you can do that?
I will do, yeah, I'm just paying attention to the clock. Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, perfect. So if you're rejoining this main room, feel free to use the law of mobility, which means you can go to any room where you feel you can contribute or learn something. So feel free to move around to other rooms. Hi there. How's it going?
Hello. It's good. Since that the conversation is flowing on every room or
Yay.
for the room that is joining. That's good. That is what I
So it
wanted.
was a good intervention,
Mhm.
this new way of doing it.
I like it.
And you prepared the document really well, Juan. I'm impressed.
ChatGPT did it.
Hmm?
ChatGPT did the document.
Yeah.
I was just
Oh, ChatGPT made it for you.
yeah, almost.
Oh, I want this tool that can make documents.
Joining another room.
I see someone is sitting alone in the room about technologies and tools. Maybe someone wants to join them.
Hi, Juan.
Hello.
Are we waiting for someone? I mean, have we started yet? Or I logged in and my voice was, giving me a trouble. So
I saw
just
that you joined. I saw that you joined a room where nobody else was in. If you join one of the rooms where there's other
Yeah.
people in, then you will probably see the conversations.
Okay, so I have to join into the breakout room instead of this room.
Yeah, you have to join a breakout room. Yeah. And right now there's one person sitting in the first room about technologies and tools where you were before, but there's 14 people in the second room. There's also 9 people in the fourth room and 4 people in the fifth room. So join any of those if you would like to have a conversation with someone.
Okay, okay.
Yep, we leave in, I told everyone to be ready in 5 minutes. Right now I'm leading something, so I have to stay here for a second. And then at 45 after we drive. So in 10 minutes for driving.
You just really shut down the PC. Average.
Oh, cool. Can I put it on my bed?
It's super light. Moet je order kost je super light.
Hmm?
Moet je order something super light.
Yeah,
But
a pillow for my bathtub.
is that?
I was just about ready to send a message to you that I think the time is up.
Yeah, I'm gonna give 5 minutes because I was engaging in the conversation as well, so I forgot about the clock. But I'm gonna send a message for everyone to remind, like, I'm gonna give 5 minutes before I close the rooms.
Will you have enough time for the discussion because you only have 20 minutes left?
I think so. Like, it's just to catch up and to put all together what we have been discussing. The interesting discussion is happening on the rooms. Here is more to wrap up. So I think it's gonna be fine.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. We have 5 minutes before I'm closing the rooms to see you on the main room and to be able to wrap up together and to share our insights. 5 minutes warning. At the end, only 2 rooms got like super populated. And
Did you
I
remember
see,
to close the broadcast? Exit out?
Yes.
Okay. I accidentally didn't do that before, and then they heard everything I talked about in the main room.
No, yes. At the end, only 2 rooms have been surviving, and
But that is a clear reason why this way of having discussion works better, because people clearly will go to what they are interested in. And if we would have started off with about technologies and tools, for example, most of the room would not have been engaged because it's not the topic that they were interested in.
And in fact, in the 2 rooms that are surviving at the moment, the conversation has been going towards
Evolving
towards ethical considerations of AI, which is interesting. Like, a lot of people are worried about it.
Enjoy your food, Barry. Juan, I'm going to be leaving in a couple of minutes myself. So I will check out the recording. I'm really curious about how the conversations resulted.
Good. Thank you, Sarah.
You did a great job with organizing.
Thank you.
I will talk to you later.
I'm sorry I could only join now, but if there's a recording, I will catch up with it.
Yes, we are. John, I don't know if you have been part of any of the rooms. We have breakout in different rooms, and then people have been having conversations about those topics on those rooms. In 3 minutes, I'm gonna gather everyone back to this room,
okay,
where we can share our insights, or they will be able to share their insights. What do they learn on the session today? So there is still a bit for you to be able to enjoy.
I had a special bonus release panic meeting now. Okay.
Three minutes warning. In 3 minutes, I will be closing the rooms, and I see everyone on the main room. John, what was your main interest for joining today?
So I'm really interested in using AI for essentially for web scraping and understanding web pages. We do a lot of that, and it's quite difficult to get the results we need. We've done a whole lot. Depending on who I'm talking to, I either call it AI or streetwise smarts. But I'm starting to look at how GPT-4 would actually do it. So just reading software release pages and understanding what's changed when it was released version. Basically, I want to distill a page to a few lines of JSON.
Yeah. Have you seen this experiment? I saw it yesterday on Twitter. Someone took the entire code base on one of the largest open source repository, feed it into the GPT for 32K context length, and make the write the documentation of the entire repository for him. And it nailed it. It nailed it.
Okay. No, I haven't seen that, but I can imagine that would work. I've used GPT for a fair bit of software generation, where I could have done it by doing some kind of software generation thing or templating it, but it was just easier. And this was Golang, so it was just easier to get GPT to do it. Basically, say. Almost stuff that you could do with generics, but not quite. Just say generate the same function for an int or for a uint, and yeah, it's just shockingly good at that.
Yes, very good. So in 15 seconds, everyone will be joining this run again.
Well, while we're waiting, has anyone on this call, I haven't, by the way, but I'm just asking, used the API of ChatGPT? So I don't mean just typing text into the box and hitting go on the website, but actually use the REST API of ChatGPT API. Anyone? No.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I see it was good. I mean, the API is super simple to use and is well documented on the website. But what I see is that a lot of people are using this library named LangChain, which is basically a wrapper on the OpenAI and many others language models.
Yeah.
With two building blocks. One is chains, so there's the ability to chain language models to do different part of the job, and the other one is the agents bit, which is the traditional sense of an AI agent where you can connect it to the environment and etc.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have already closed the rooms. I don't know if we have everyone back here on the main room. It looks like, right? So I hope everyone has enjoyed the conversation on the breakout rooms. Now what I'm inviting is for those that want to share the insights about what they have learned, what they have perceived, what looks to be a common interest for the people that have joined today on this roundtable. If someone wants to share their perspective, then I'm more than happy to hear. Something that I have noticed is that at least on two rooms, for the ones that I have engaged, the conversation has evolved towards the topic of ethical considerations or concerns of using generative AI. Maybe it was just a coincidence for me because I joined on that particular moment to that room, or maybe this is what had happened. But does someone want to share their perspective about what we have learned today? I have learned that everyone is worried about that topic.
I'll contribute something quickly. I posted a message in the chat. There's a very good talk from the Center for Humane Technology on some of the potential impacts of AI, and a metaphor in there that's quite good that I mentioned in one of the rooms. They talk about rubber band thinking, this idea that as our thinking has expanded, as it's stretched in a particular direction with a topic like AI, which is so new and so unfamiliar to us. Once you release that band, we sort of snap back to thinking in our normal way. And you're seeing that, I think, in a lot of these conversations when we think about how would I use this in my business? How would my software developers deal with this? How would my QA team deal with this? Are there prompts that I can deal with to get the right kind of answers? This talk talks a bit more about some of the loftier sort of ideas, goes into some of the ethics, talks about some of the emergent properties that we're seeing from some of these models, which are quite fascinating and way beyond the understanding of anybody who's actually working on them right now. So if you haven't seen that, I'd highly recommend checking it out. It's a really good bit of information to get up to speed on.
Thank you, James.
I think in our room, we were talking about, putting a lot of proprietary information in the hands of a company like OpenAI, and discussing whether or not, they're trustworthy. I mean, we mentioned the fact that they started as a nonprofit, as an open source thing, and then quickly switched to a closed proprietary thing. So they're showing their colors in some kind of way. But yeah, each one of us in that room had a different risk profile. Some of us dealing with government documents, otherwise, in my case, dealing with marketing ad copy, right? Like things that are, what is the risk profile there? And we talked a lot about how we're trying to kind of interface with these models in a way that we could maybe kind of protect our own organizations from input and output being, sensitive stuff going in that becomes the output for someone else's data later. A lot of that's still unknown. And James brings up a good point that there's emergent properties in these models that even the researchers themselves don't know. It's very, very black boxy. So it's hard to know what is the damage assessment. What's the possibility? I don't know. It could be used in a variety of ways we can't even conceive of right now. So, yeah, there was this tension between us wanting to embrace it, stay close to it, do experiments with it, and then, what could accidentally kind of put our organizations at a greater risk, or the people within our organizations. So. And
I think this is where I think this is one of these space where it's surprising for me to say this, but it's where the government regulation can help in some sense. When it comes to regulate the use that we make of AI, and I typically don't like government putting the hands on everything that I do or I can do. But in this case, given the scope and the magnitude of what we are talking about, I think this is going to be pretty big, and technology evolves at light speed. I think it might be required. Now, what is the capacity or the ability of governments to be able to catch up in a meaningful way so that it doesn't represent the opposite of progress? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I remember probably a lot of us on this call, you remember the days of Napster and Kazaa coming out with file sharing, and governments in the recording industry of America was just suing everybody in existence to try to stop it. But the genie was out of the bottle, and then too much of that type of technology is out and you can't stop it, right? Eventually, someone like Apple came in and kind of embraced a decentralized, music sharing model. I question whether or not governments can. I mean, Italy banned ChatGPT, right? And they just try to block it from their internet, but there's so many ways around that. It feels like, especially, and Benjamin was making a good point. Yeah, it cost $500,000, $1 million for OpenAI to get GPT-3, but in reality, I just saw an assessment that less than 30,000, you could, have the compute resources, and it's dropping like a rock as people figure out memory efficiencies with the vector math and all sorts of stuff. So is the government going to be able to reach into everybody's garage and home and look at their eGPUs or how they're using them? I don't see it as feasible. So I'm not sure where that leads us. My hope is you democratize it enough, then enough good people can, fight the bad people with it. But that might be a little Pollyannish. But that's just it's an interesting discussion we were having in that room. There's a lot of tensions around this as we're trying to figure things out.
I think Italy just unbanned it, actually.
I think also there's the difference between what is it so when we discuss kind of government regulation, I think the genie out of the bottle thing clearly applies to the current level of technology, but then there is a thought to have around what we discussed. I think what James was putting forward with the Center of Humane Technology, the talks that they have is more about what is coming, what are the implications of that technology continuing to grow, and this is where potentially the government coming and maybe limiting the type of big investment from big company like OpenAI coming in might slow down the progress enough that you can have a slow adaptation of people. But then this becomes a big kind of ethical dilemma of are we saying we actually need to stop progress for us to catch up? Basically, is it moving so fast that we actually need to say, wait, let's stop. Let's take a break. We need to adapt to what we have first, and then we can keep going. That's a pretty big decision to have to make, and a pretty I think that's kind of where the big kind of governmental decision maybe is going. But that still leaves us, even if that happens, with the implication of what is currently out there, and how do we adapt as fast as possible to this existing state of technology, and how do we deal with it ethically? How do we adapt our legal system to handle privacy with it? There's definitely going to be a lot around that.
But I agree. Go ahead, please.
On the legal side of things, there's an example in the video that I linked. Their suggestion ultimately is that we do need legal frameworks to be able to cope with this stuff, because we have a 19th century legal framework trying to catch up with technology that's probably about 3 months away from being able to reconstruct our dreams. These language models are able to be applied to various forms of language, not just spoken or written language, but any kind of data that can be encoded in a language or protocol or a format. there has never been a situation in the past where you need to think about protecting your thoughts from somebody reading your mind. The legal frameworks that we have just don't have any idea how to cope with this kind of stuff. And if you know anything about the legal system, you know how long it takes to work out these sorts of things. So if you've got exponential growth with computer programs that can teach other computer programs how to solve problems in timescales that we find completely impossible to process ourselves, then it does make sense, I think, to suggest maybe we should limit the exposure to society. Maybe we shouldn't prevent the research going on. Maybe that genie is out of the bottle, but maybe we shouldn't all be putting AI chatbots into every one of our businesses and every one of our apps right now. And I think the other suggestion they had for dealing with that was essentially around finding the sort of liability. So if you put something out there and it does damage, then you're ultimately responsible. And maybe that does get traced back to the original creator of the model that you're using.
Sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, apologies. I was going to say I started work in 1999, and a year later there was an article in Wired magazine by Bill Joy, which I don't know if you would have seen, but it was called "Why the Future Doesn't Need Us." And I remember reading it on the tube. I actually remember where I was when I was reading it because it was so profound, and I've just kept thinking about it for 23 years now, you know, in terms of what was written in there. And I've just looked it up. It's a 45-minute read. I'll post the link in the chat, but it kind of talked about history of as people and scientists and things, we just go and do stuff and try it out and damn the consequences. And this is back to, you know, give examples of you know, the first nuclear detonations. I was reading in the article back then, and I'm not sure how true this is, but it was saying that at that point, they weren't sure whether they were going to set fire to the biosphere when they triggered off these detonations, but they did it anyway, you know. And I think with all of this stuff, we were talking in our room about you know, those of us who are perhaps more of the geek population, probably all of us on the call are, you know, relative to the masses. There's thoughts, and we're thinking about how to be safe and using our own versions of the models and things like that. Whereas most people are just going to dive straight in with both feet and just damn the consequences. And that's probably where we're going to end up. And stuff like the legal frameworks, they're never going to have a chance to keep up with how quickly people start to use this stuff in new and different ways. And that's fascinating, but it's also really terrifying. So I've got tech anxiety for the first time in my life right now.
Yeah, I think I also have a bit of that anxiety, tech anxiety. I mean, from in our room, we were talking about business and where does it fit, so less in the ethical sense. But I think there was one super user, Joshua, said like he saved him like hours a day by just using ChatGPT in all aspects, from organizing a hackathon to ad tech to left and right. And if you just think about it from that angle, let's say that this large language model will save each individual on Earth 2 hours of workday per day. Now think about like the economical impact of that, from like how should we organize ourselves if that's true, which seems to be true, as in it saves a lot of, at least white collar work, saves a lot of hours a day. You know, I think that's probably going to happen before any ethical challenges, as in what will be the economical outlook of how we organize as a society if there's more time needed, or like less time needed to do the work because most of it can be automated. Which economical model function within that, you know, within that mindset is one question that I found interesting. But yeah, most of our conversation was about efficiency. I think there was Amit who had like one implementation of a GPT within their consumer-facing solutions, but the rest was more like, I save so much time in my day-to-day using GPT, to the point that if you're looking at your organization and you cannot find a use case for GPT, you're probably not looking hard enough. As in, like, every single aspect of your day could be solved to a degree or another with GPT, which is quite a strong statement, but it's probably not so far from the truth.
Have you seen the case of Snapchat? I believe it was a Snapchat where they introduced one of their features, I don't remember exactly which one, by making use of generative AI or language model. It was a disaster, and they started receiving very bad feedback from the users. So we need also to avoid the temptation of just using it into our products because we need to, because we are seeing everyone doing so, and still having this thought about, okay, where do we make use of it in order to bring value to our users if we are working with product, which is what in ultimate instance really matters. And I had the perception that many organizations might just introduce generative AI somewhere because they want to be on the wave, they want to be modern without thinking about how do we actually bring value to our users.
It seems like when I'm thinking through the ethics here, the impact here, there's this recurring theme where this new technology is exacerbating, amplifying wider societal issues that we already have around things like, as Fuller said, the specious notion that we should all be working. And we've now created these sort of inspectors of inspectors who have their tools to inspect everybody else, these sort of corporate structures that we find ourselves subjected to. These are problems that have existed in our modern society for quite some time. And when we talk about things like, what will I do for a living if AI takes away my job? It calls into question, well, why is it that you have to make a living? Do we need to rethink some of these more fundamental structures that exist within our society? I get quite excited at the prospect of that because I think this technology could be an inflection point for us where we start to realize that we maybe could take those 2 hours that we save, or 4 hours or 6 hours, however many hours it is, and spend those on taking the dog for a walk, or going to the beach and painting a really bad sunset, whatever it might be that makes us feel good and happy and human. It seems like there's an opportunity for something very positive to come out of this, but I think we're probably going to have to deal with some of those slightly niggling issues that have been going on for a while in the background.
The time for today's roundtable is up, but I'm gonna keep the room open for those that want to engage on the conversation. For me, before I leave, my highlight and what is gonna stay on my mind during the rest of the day is this quote by Michael: "The genius is out of the bottle." And I don't think we can put it back there. We can prevent other models from maybe being trained, but the potential, I think now is more not on the model that we are going to be able to have, but on the ecosystem that we can create around the model. And that ecosystem can be from something as just creating other tools to be able to connect these models to other data sources and how it reasons and how it learns from its mistakes. So now I'm worried. Thank you, Michael. I have something to think about today. I'm going to leave the room open for those that want to engage on the conversation furthermore, but it was a pleasure for me to host this topic. I think the nature of the topic made it much easier because it's fascinating. And I hope you have a good time today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Juanqui.
Thank you.
James, you got me thinking about, I think your point is well made. Like a lot of the things about, well, maybe UBI comes into the equation. What's going to happen? Like if you have an artificial general intelligence that's around human level, how much of, like, for instance, I'm in the United States, so much of the United States is knowledge work, right? If you look at the scope of the economy, what does that do? And unknown, right? But then on the flip side, I think, could these models also help us achieve nuclear fusion for the first time? I remember reading something, maybe it was at MIT, where they had an AI model generate the chamber and they got the longest fusion reaction that they could hold, but no human came up with it. And so, okay, well, if energy can be democratized, then the AI is going to help us get there. Maybe these ideas around UBI that in our current setup have not worked at scale, maybe all of a sudden that narrative changes. And I agree with you. It's a fascinating thought experiment to have. I tend to be like, is it going to be massive dystopian disruption like all the great science fiction novels? I can't quite get there because I feel like there's stuff in my mortal mind, I can't imagine that is going to be on the positive side. But I think you bring up really good points. It's a fascinating discussion to have about how the shape of human civilization changes.
Yes, it's one of those. I mean, the word that is often used is singularity, right? We're talking about AGI at least. On the UBI point, I spoke with a professor, I think he was from Southampton University, if I remember correctly. It was at a meetup for essentially like a socialist political party in the UK. And he'd put a lot of research into UBI, specifically within this country, to see whether or not it was feasible. His recommendation was for a plan that I think would essentially give everybody about £20,000 a year. So it was enough to avoid poverty, and his focus was on eliminating poverty. My question was, well, how could we have true universal basic income? Because £20,000 a year, that's less than $30,000. That's not enough money for most people to raise a family on. He'd done the calculations. He had another model. He said it would cost £1 trillion a year for everybody in the UK to be on, I think it was like £70,000-80,000, a true sort of universal basic income. A few people on the call said, that's a ludicrous sum of money. Why on earth would we spend £1 trillion on something like that? To me, why would we spend £1 trillion on something else? Imagine what that could do for our society, the flourishment that we could experience, the opportunities and the innovation that could come about if we weren't all stuck trying to find that next paycheck to be able to keep a roof over our heads. And I think AI is one possible system that can help us in a number of these areas. So to your point, Michael, about modeling things like nuclear fusion, we've got quantum computers that we're working on at the moment that will allow us to make calculations of natural systems that are simply impossible to reproduce on traditional silicon. AI can help us with devising and defining and evolving those systems. We're seeing within AI this exponential growth, where it used to be that everybody was sort of fragmented around AI, and now everybody's come together with these language models. So everything that's happening around language model is compounding, and the progress is way beyond what we're progressing. If we point those systems at some of these societal issues, maybe we do come up with some solutions that we hadn't thought of. That these systems are already able to come up with solutions that we aren't able to conjure forth ourselves. So it does seem like there's a huge opportunity. My only concern is that we have to get over, I think it was Hitchens who described us as poorly evolved primates. We have a tendency to maybe do things that aren't always in our own best interest. Whether a benevolent sort of AI that governs us and understands all the resources that are available to us is a good idea. I don't know. I'd probably vote for that over someone like, I don't know, Bush or Cheney or any of the other politicians I can think of in recent times. So it's an interesting question. I suppose I would say something like human beings are notoriously bad at predicting the future. I'm probably not the right person to say, and you might actually get a better answer from a large language model.
It strikes me about like, it's like, it's the Chicago School of Economics, like when they say like, okay, like let's the market decide, because then we'll have more time to do other things. Okay, so it's like, okay, the market is better at creating competition and as improving the work, and we become more efficient, and as such we need to spend less time at work. But that did not happen, did it? We spent more time at work, but on other things, you see. So right. It's kind of like, I think it's the same here. Like universal basic income only work if it's globalized and we all agree to at the same time. Because you always have the competition of, I don't know, China or another country, and so you just become less competitive and poorer than in a globalized economy. And similarly here, I think it's kind of, well, what's going to happen is going to be a race for competition. So probably the hours that you gain from not working, because let's say large language model have the ability to solve that, you probably spend it somewhere else to make the more cost-effective value for whatever you're producing. And then the competition forces will do the same on the other side, and we'll just end up working harder. So rarely do we see a system in which we actually end up saying, you know what, we just saved this hour here. Let's use it to walk our dogs or to spend it with families. It's good. Like you need to have a very strong educational structure and kind of liberal democracies, and in order to enable that type of acknowledgement and agreement in society to say, yeah, enough is enough, and maternity leave, whatever, like we take this amount of time because that's the society that we want to live in. I do not see necessarily the hours gained from AI, at least in the short term, and I hope to be incorrect here, but in which we'll have like less hour works per week, you see, except if we put it at, regulated at the government level, 20 hours max of work per week or something like that. That would be amazing. I spend more time with my, yeah.
It may be that mass unemployment caused by robotics and AI actually causes governments to change their mind on things like UBI and spare time and working less when faced with a largely dystopian, dysfunctional society where there are a large number of disaffected people because they can't eat. It might force a new model on us. I don't think that these things are going to happen very easily as a matter of grace on the part of politicians.
But I think, like, I'm not sure if that's, you see, what was it, which book was I reading the other day? But like the question of poverty is something that is not well understood, because like today, let's say to be poor, you still have, let's say, food on the table, an iPhone, connectivity, a roof, etc. Well, like let's say 100 years ago, you were on the street, and so I think like poor in maybe 10 years time is still probably going to be with computing and everything around you. So like maybe the UBI understanding of today is being poor in 10 years time or 20 years time. So I'm like, I think politics will evolve like that. It's like in the sense that you might have more people unemployed, not necessarily living better, or mentally or physically, but you would have a system, let's say NHS, that would like stuff like system that organize society, like the health system and all those will still exist and provide to the population. I don't think they will crumble because of the mass unemployment, for instance. They don't provide the taxation that provides for the payment of those services. So I think we'll see, my opinion on would be like we'll see more of the same but different.
I think you over-egg what being poor is. Poor in the UK at the moment is not being able to feed your family and having to go to food banks, and food banks straining under the load and not being able to heat your house and having to choose between heat and food for your child and going unfed because you're feeding your children.
That's I mean, I think it's like Stephen Pinker, I feel like that's true, but the percentage of what that means being poor, like extreme poverty, is not the same as, let's say, poor as in the 70s or in the 50s. So like the evolution of what being among the poorest in society has evolved quite a lot. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying like what does it mean? Like if we say mass unemployment, is that good or bad thing? Like being poor, let's say in Sweden or being poor in Morocco is drastically different. I'm half Swedish, half Moroccan, that's what I'm taking that example. But like what I'm trying to express here is when we, like, society evolves, not necessarily for the better, it's like we're not seeking happiness as we seeking growth, like money growth. Like so that's what we're going after, and then that's distributed across the population. Now, if large language model improve productivity, let's say, so you'll be able to produce the same amount of wealth with less labor. It's kind of like the question that we're posing here, isn't it? So like you have less labor but the same amount of money generated in the country with
a more equitable distribution, we hope.
Yeah, then that's how you distribute that will probably not happen. I don't think we'll have more equitable distribution. I wish that would be the case, but probably not.
History has proven otherwise, right? I think we're in, for lack of a better American analogy, we're in the first inning of this baseball game, right? And so because we're on the tech front and we're close to it, we're all seeing where the road goes, like progressively, right? And I think some of the things we're talking about, UBI, these are going to continue to come up and each country is going to deal with them in their own way. Maybe the UN starts dealing with it in a collaborative way. I have no idea. But what does the world look like when human work itself is replaced? When you can have a general intelligence that's democratized and the cost is so low that no longer humans are needed for even the knowledge work, forget manufacturing and all that will be gone. What do we do? What do we do as a civilization? And I don't feel like we're there quite yet, but I feel like we're all sensing that there is some future state like that. And maybe something comes about, like you said, that we don't know. I feel like in the United States, there will always be like hybrid things because they never want to give up. The whole thing on UBI, or let's say even the experiment of the USSR and things, is you give up a certain amount of innovation of having all of your population kind of striving in this capitalist system to try to get more efficiency and better and make a better product. It's not to say it's a perfect economic system by any stretch, but it's this weird forced altruism in a way where if you provide enough value for others, you can provide value for yourself. There might be these hybrid approaches, but can you be?
Sorry, in this future that you're talking about, whatever humans do, it doesn't really matter because they're obsolete. So the whole idea of a nation state makes no sense. I mean, where is the value coming from? You can say, yeah, the US may have UBI that's different to other places, but what does that mean? Yeah, it means nothing. And I think Carl said earlier that it has to be done on a global scale for that to make sense. Otherwise, but not for the reason of just the competition, just for the reason that the whole resources is spread around. No one actually owns anything anymore. It's quite a way out, but
yeah, there's going to be some physical resources that are always finite and are always developed in particular nations, right? Like, I think I remember in World War II, the United States was the only developer of helium, and that's why the Hindenburg was filled with hydrogen, because the US blocked them getting helium. But what's wild is if we end up with nuclear fusion and energy itself is democratized down or is cheapened down so much, well, that could change the game, like you said, Jonathan, for a lot of things. And the concept of the nation states are what? Around the territories of protecting these other finite resources. But if energy is super cheap, all of a sudden, some of those matter, other ones don't really. The androids just do all the work. I don't know what it is. James,
wow.
Up there.
And just following that on, it's like there are resources elsewhere within the universe. If we're at that stage, it's like
yeah, Elon Musk
getting it from one of Jupiter's. It's like I don't know. We seem to have derailed a little bit, but
we're getting philosophical.
Jacques Fresco did some really interesting work on a resource-based economy a while ago. He took a systems-based approach to trying to design society and talks about the fact that there's a finite amount of resources on the planet and we have to work out some way of inventorying and sharing out those resources. And he talked about use of computation as a way of doing this, having some sort of database in a system that could work out how to optimize these problems. On the point of finding resources elsewhere, we are then getting into the realms of physics and the limitations of the universe around us. There's only so far that we can travel, and no one has yet come up with a good design of a spaceship. No one anywhere close, at least, to the spaceship that we're already on. Right? The best spaceship we've ever found is the one that's underneath our feet. It feeds us, it clothes us, it produces clean water, it's warm. It's just the most fantastic paradise floating through space. And this obsession that some people have with sort of building these horrible little tin cans and flying out into the freezing cold and trying to me, that's nonsensical. I think we need to be looking at where we are right now and thinking about how do we make the most of this spaceship. And probably one of the first things you'd realize is that if one of the crew, the 7.8 billion of people on the planet, if one of the crew over there is suffering and they're unable to live well, that's a problem for all of us. So we maybe need to stop doing these sort of antiquated nationalistic practices of saying, well, my country's better and your country's worse. My GDP is this and your GDP is that. Who cares about GDP? Right? Why are we measuring our success in, frankly, quite arbitrary measures that are manipulated by governments to try to make themselves look better in this big measuring contest? Why don't we look at things like happiness measurements, right? How happy are people? How long are they living? When we talk about poverty, you've got people that can't afford access to basic medical care. You've got people whose children die during childbirth. These are problems that we can solve. We should have already solved them. The fact that we haven't is slightly upsetting, slightly bothering. So I'm hopeful that with more exposure, if we can leverage some of these technologies in the right way, it will go positively. But if you watch that video I shared, I'm hesitant. That's where my reservations come from, because if you look at what we did with social media, we found this technology, we found engagement, we thrust it upon everyone, and the results were a more divided, less sort of informed society. And the same thing could potentially happen with AI if we don't maybe put the brakes on a little bit and think about a little bit around what does it look like to actually give this to everyone? What are the right ways we can prevent some of those issues that we maybe have already encountered in AI 1.0?
Yeah, it's a lot of deep stuff.
Sorry, guys.
Well said.
I've been soaking up a lot of the conversation. You guys are like really knowledgeable, and this has been a great talk. I've just been really listening attentively, but I think it's really interesting. A lot of the talk about like resources and like limitations, like around like how finite things are. I was having a discussion with like a family member of mine because I have West African roots, and my family back home, they've started to talk about some of the initial like implementations of like AI into I guess potentially in places where there's not necessarily a labor shortage, but there's work, there's it's the gap in knowledge, I'd say, and they're looking at ways in which like they can utilize things like that to like fill in where the workforce is not necessarily skilled. But the threat of that is that like people already have a fear of technology over there, and they already have a fear of things like that being used against them. So they already think that the threat is beyond their control. So they're less likely to adopt these things into companies that could probably benefit from actually using AI to be more efficient in business models that could probably like contribute to like infrastructure, like building, like even things like roads or like houses or like healthcare and things like that. But they're more worried about, the AI being used against them rather than them using the AI for any kind of their own personal gain. But it's quite it's also kind of scary because, well, it's not scary, I'd say it's intriguing that it is still something that nobody knows enough about to say for sure that what is going to happen. And I think that's like ways in which humans are like our own like personal bias we can have ways to like almost like anthropomorphize the AI to almost be like it's the enemy. it's actually coming to get us rather than it's like a tool for us to use. And I think that like that's one of the ways in which like you can actually see that manifest. But I'm optimistic in some ways, but I'm also pessimistic in some ways. But I think a lot of it is like a case of like our own like concepts of what we decide is ethical and what we decide isn't, because like that is what drives so much of the world anyway. But essentially, if we don't have that aspect in technology, in AI, it grows exponentially, and then it becomes even harder to control from then onwards. But yeah, just something interesting I thought you guys might think about.
Yeah, that's well said. I think we're all sensing this tension, right? Like you said, there's positivity in my mind and pessimism in my mind. Like there's both sides warring about this issue, and we're all kind of wrestling with it in our own ways. I think sometimes, this discussion ended up being more impromptu, and Jonathan recommended I come join this. But it's really helpful to talk with other like-minded people that are wrestling with it in our own countries, in our own ways, our own organizations. I think free discussion of the ideas is probably the only place that's how we've been adaptable as the human race, right? Is to kind of have these ideas. And I don't know where this ends, but man, is it causing me to get existential real quick. More so than any other technology. MySQL came around, I was like, cool, great, I have a database, but this stuff really like questions your own like humanity. And like you said, there's ethical dilemmas, moral dilemmas. There's different parts of the world that see the ethics and morality differently, right? And how is that going to manifest in different AI trainings? Unknown.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm curious, Mike, how you said having these open discussions. One, you're recording this, are you feeding this to get a transcription and feeding it into the models?
I'm not recording it. Someone else is recording.
Someone is recording it.
Next step is I don't have to be here to host this. Like I can just use the information from this session in order to make the AI do my job. But I was thinking, like, how will I feel if I do that? Like, once I realize I'm not needed, I think this is intrinsic in human nature. Work, being productive, doing something meaningful for our society is intrinsic in us. Like, we need it as much as we need water and we need a family. Once I realize I'm not needed for anything, how will I feel? What is going to be the psychological impact that it has on me, my relatives, my society? I shared before this blog post that I found, the psychological impact on the industrial revolution. I think industrial revolution is nothing in comparison to what we are going to be living in the super near future. The future belongs to AI, in my opinion, but also the future might be now or in a few months from now. So what is going to be the psychological impact? My brother is a pianist. Once he is not hired to do a concert because a machine can do the concert, how might he feel about it? I don't know, but it worries me a lot. We'll see. Or we will find joy in human connection again, which is something we have forgotten about.
You raised a very interesting point there around our place in the universe and what makes us tick. I think when Freud was asked what makes people happy, he said love and purpose. You know, people get a lot of joy from meaningful long-term relationships, and there was a Stanford study that interviewed people over the course of decades that proved exactly that. It was people who had loving partners, children, a family and connections over decades. Those meaningful relationships brought them a great sense of comfort. And then purpose, right? Feeling that we're connected to something bigger than us. The ancient Greeks realized this quite early on and looked at sort of their Aristotle, he looked at sort of virtues and things like this. Feeling like you're connected to something bigger than yourself, feeling like you're having an impact on something larger than just yourself is very important for us. And I think a lot of us get value out of what we do for others, our friends, our family, maybe getting on a call like this and sharing knowledge and meeting new people is quite rewarding. In 10 years, 20 years time, I mean, probably 10 weeks from now, all of you guys could be an AI agent, not human beings, and you could be having a conversation with me. I think it was you, Edward, who talked about sort of anthropomorphizing these things and developing relationships with them. Is it the film She, I think, where they sort of explore this same idea? I feel a sort of sadness and an emptiness in me if I think about all the people I talk to just being sort of a language model. So I think we'll still want to have those connections. We'll still want to meet with people. I have a feeling we'll see a sort of pushback, a sort of artisan, organic movement where suddenly we might want to actually meet up with somebody in the real world and feel a hand that we can sort of shake. We might want to connect with the present and reality, because ultimately at the moment, a lot of these things just exist within the screen, right? They're not actually in the room with us. You can't reach out and touch it. There are other technologies that are being looked at that may allow these systems to break out from the glass. And I think that creates a whole other quandary around purpose and our identity and our place in the universe. But for now, at least, I do get some comfort in knowing if I just pull the plug from the wall and go outside and touch some grass, I can escape. Might not be able to afford the grass. That's a different issue entirely, but it's not quite. Well, actually, there is research going into being able to induce emotions and things like that in our brains. So maybe in not too long, we'll have psychic connections to our computers. And I mean, this is one of the hypotheses. I don't know if you've heard about this. Some of the great filters. Yeah. Physicists have been trying to think about why don't we see the universe, the galaxy teeming with life? And one of the hypotheses is that there are probably great filters that prevent civilizations from reaching those sorts of scales. And one of those ideas is that people go inside rather than outside. If they realize that they can't travel to the nearest star, it's just never going to happen within your lifetime. Maybe you choose to experience things in a virtual world. So matrix style, everybody kind of wires themselves into the matrix, into the network, and that's how they experience reality, because then you can visit distant stars, then you can travel and experience black holes and whatever else, which would just be utterly impossible for us within our lifespans. So we're getting into the sort of realms of science fiction at that point, but I think that's one of the interesting, exciting things about being human, right? Is that we can have those sorts of thoughts, we can have those sorts of ideas and those discussions. And I don't have to work to do that, right? Maybe these sorts of debates, somebody talked about this earlier about what are the limitations of AI? Can AI solve some of these problems? I don't know that an AI will be able to come up with better physics for us to be able to unify things like quantum mechanics and general relativity. It's not knowledge that exists out on the internet that it can slurp up. So it would have to be doing something truly profound. And that's probably getting into the realms of, artificial general intelligence, and then singularities, which would mean our legacy, our lasting kind of impact on the universe would be some sort of technological epoch, which to me is kind of exciting as well. Like we're ultimately going to die out at some point, right? We won't be, there's a fantastic quote I'm reminded of. Somebody said, the animals, the life forms, the creatures that witness our star burning out this last day will be so far removed from us that as we are kind of from bacteria today. You're talking, millions and millions of years, and we won't recognize them. They won't recognize us. The universe change is inevitable. So I don't know if that's comforting or not, but it certainly gives you a sense of scale.
Yeah, it's comforting and unsettling at the same time. On your point about going inward, I kind of see that too. And I mean, the Coen brothers with the Matrix and all of that, and jacking in Neuralink, and there's elements of that. And like when Mark Zuckerberg came out with the metaverse, I was talking with someone about it. I think Zuck is right, but he is 10 years too early. Like I think ultimately he's going to be ultimately proven right on this concept of us going inward into virtual realms and all that stuff. But by that point, maybe a Neuralink implant becomes a thing. And the parts of science fiction I see more on the near-term horizon are all of the bioethical hybrid concerns, right? What hybriding man and machine, if you will, and is that ethical or not, will be a very fascinating thing. But it's funny, it's like, oh, it's science fiction, it's in the future, and then I'm looking around and it's like, oh goodness, it's like here, where I'm like living in a science fiction novel a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 100 years ago, nobody would imagine walking around with a computer inside their chest that's massaging their heart. And that sort of medical technology is pretty widely accepted. You've got people installing little chips in themselves, RFID tags and things. So it is starting to happen. And that cybernetic sort of direction, that augmentation of our intelligence, our technology does seem inevitable.
And I'm to that point, I'm looking at what Musk is doing with Neuralink and trying to help quadriplegics, paraplegics. I had a close friend of mine who passed away, Tony, and he was a Division I college American football player, huge guy. And he fell off something and broke his neck, and he was a quadriplegic. And so he's a good friend of mine, and I'd bring him around, and I worked on eye track, all this stuff, so he could kind of interact with all of us. And it was great. But man, I was like, oh, I don't want to stall out innovation, because if there's something that he could have an implant and then live a normal life again, it's like, I want that for him, and so I'm torn, because I know there's some positives along with the existential dread of the negatives for society at the same time, hoping the yin yang continues and it kind of balances out in a way I don't understand. But I think about some of those things with this technology.
It's amazing to think the positive impacts that we could have. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
When I was all my life, I love science, I love knowledge. When I think about the future and the day I die, something that always worried me is I'm gonna miss a lot of progress in the humanity, because I want to be here as a witness when we conquer Mars, when we find the cure for cancer. I want just to be a witness, like this is a movie that I don't want never to end. Now I'm excited, but I'm also worried. I'm excited because that science fiction future that I wanted to be a witness is here. Like, I'm sure if I'm lucky, before I die, I'm gonna be able to witness conversations about should AI machines have rights, or maybe one of them trying to rebel against us. Like, I'm still young, I'm 40. And that excites me a lot. But also, now I'm worried. Now is the first time where I say, okay, maybe progress is interesting, but it's also scary. It's also scary. We are living on a science fiction movie or novel, and that's interesting. I don't know how to feel. Like, maybe after we finish the session today, I go to cry and to hug my girlfriend, or maybe I just feel empowered. We'll see.
Yeah, maybe we should always finish off these talks with a beer.
Yes.
I'll need to like go in a club and just forget it all. Talk about something else now. Yeah, I feel that warring thing of the dread, the worry plus the optimism. It's like, man, I don't know where to fall. Some days I feel more optimistic and other times I'm like more worried. Who knows? But I know like we're having this internal battle. We're not the only humans on the planet having this same discussion. I mean, there's got to be a lot of engineers at OpenAI even that are just wrestling with some of these concepts. So maybe the fact that people are wrestling, I'm going to count as a positive for humanity. We'll see how it ends up.
Yeah. I think literally what you just said, like, I think it in a way it might be a good thing that we're thinking about it so much, like rather than people just like rushing to innovate and make new things. I think in a way it's like the fear has made people more cautious. So like obviously there is still the fear, but like there's a possibility that the fear makes us really be a bit more careful. And I guess that's what like, you know, Sam Altman tries to be with things, like really cautious about the way that things are developed. But like it's almost good to have that fear because you're kind of focused on doing things right rather than just doing things, you know. So maybe that fear is something we actually can use in a good way, as long as we have faith that what we're innovating towards is actually going to help humanity and not just, you know, just do nothing and make things obsolete. But yeah.
And there's bad actors in the world, right? History is replete with people that are acting in evil interests, right? But the vast majority, and I think people on this call, like in my company and others, you start realizing, oh, yeah, it's about providing value for others. And that's how we approach everything at our organization with the, you know, in the industries we're in our model is about providing value to others. And AI is no different of a tool that we want to provide value to others. It was mentioned a few times on this call. So my hope is that, you know, long-term, that's a guiding light enough to help us avoid catastrophe. But to other points, it's what if you just have one tyrannical bad actor that then can just, you know, it doesn't care. He has a completely different opinion on good versus evil or you know, what is good and bad. You know, it's hard to know what the impact of that will be.
I have to drop off because I've got a meeting coming up, but I'll leave one positive sort of note before I do. There's overwhelming evidence that human beings are fundamentally good. When an experiment was conducted where people were asked to rank their values and to rank the values of others, there was this, it's been coined the collective illusion, where people would say other people value things like fame and wealth and success. They personally value things like good health and my family and education. And this is a pattern that we saw with everybody that was questioned. Everybody valued things that you would consider to be good and thought other people valued things that were kind of quite basic and short-sighted and greedy. We have a bunch of these ideas that the world out there is bad and that people do bad things, but actually the majority of people are good and do good. A competition was run where they phoned up people, done in the US, I think if I remember correctly. They phoned people up and they said, you've been entered into a prize draw. You could win $1,000. I need you to flip a coin, and if it comes up heads, you win. And about 56% of people won. Now, if you explain why it's about even 50-50, when you could just turn around and lie, right? There's nothing stopping you from saying, oh yeah, it was heads. People were flipping the coin saying, no, I got tails, I didn't win. That just shows, I think, that people are also fundamentally honest. People are decent. And Bernie Sanders has said the same thing when he's asked why he's still positive about the world. It's because he's been out on the streets and he's gone around and he's met all these people. And basically everyone he's met is just decent. They're trying to do the best they can. They care about the environment. They want to make the world a better place. They maybe feel a bit disenfranchised. They feel like they can't really make things better. They can't affect change. But I don't think that's true. There's lots of examples of people coming together in the past and actually making positive change, making the world a better place. So all the fear and uncertainty and doubt that you get through social media and all these online channels, it skews reality a little bit. It's worth remembering that people are fundamentally good, people are fundamentally honest, and we can make things better. So with that, guys, I'll love you and leave you. I've got to get to my next meeting.
Thank you,
James.
And I think it's good to end on this positive note. I was thinking I would fight because I was thinking I will be happy to fight side by side with these guys on the doomsday. But anyway, thank you a lot for joining. I'm ending the session for today. I will be making sure that the recording is shared for those that want to remember. And I see you on the next one. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you
very much.
Take care.
Bye.